But first, with me, the Prime Minister, our first interview since the election. Prime Minister, good morning. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's great to be here in Melbourne.
Now, I'm a bit baffled about this thing on the Monash. The price has gone up $360 million on these widening of the Monash. Why?
Well, there's always swings and roundabouts with these projects. I mean, stage one actually came in a little under. Since we first committed to this project and we've had the negotiations with the state government, we've seen some movements in material costs, we've seen some movements in transport costs. There's a lot of projects going on, not just in Melbourne, but around the country too, and that's putting some price pressures into the system. But what we find we've got a $101 billion program over the next decade, and we will find that some projects will increase in cost, others will come under, and so there's no overall variation to our overall budget over the period.
State government announced it March 18 last year. You confirmed it September 18 last year. This is the same project, just the price has gone up. So really, the only thing that's new today is a price cost blowout.
Well, what it's about is getting it done, and this means 9 minutes.
But it was announced in September last year.
Well, as you go through detailed project costing, Neil, these dollars do move around.
$360 million.
What's important is to get it done. This is 9 minutes less on someone's commute time. This is 600 jobs. It's a really important part of dealing with congestion in the southeast, and we're really keen to see it happen. So one of the first things I did after the election is I sat down with Daniel Andrews here, as I did with all the premiers. And we ran over the pipeline of all the projects in all the states and territories. And I said, we've got to get these things happening. And this is one we've been working on since then. So I'm pleased we're getting it done. And I'm sure commuters and people who'll be having access to those extra lanes over 32 kilometres will be happy about it too.
So that's $360 million on a $711 million project. It's almost a 50% blowout.
We put $500 million in, and now we've increased that by $190. That's just the Commonwealth. So we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar project.
All right, but it's $360 million more than it was.
Well, I agree.
It's a huge blowout.
Well, it's for the reasons that I've said. So,
but it won't be done any quicker, will it?
Well, it's getting underway now, so that's a good thing.
But that was always planned.
Yeah, that's right. But it's happening. That's the point.
And it's finished.
And if we didn't commit to these funds, Neil, it wouldn't be happening.
It's ready. It's time for the next state election.
We've got to get it done.
It's ready to open just as the state election hits.
Well, I'm happy that it'd be open, Neil.
Okay. Well, does this mean East West Links?
I don't think punters care if it's before the next election or after. They just want it done, and that's what the Premier and I are working to achieve.
I think the Premier cares about the timing. Yeah. Does this mean East West Links off the table?
Not from our point of view, but that's really up to the state government. I mean,
you'd still like to build it?
Yeah, we would, and our commitment remains exactly what I said it was before the election. There's been no change in the Premier's view about that, and there's been no change in ours.
Won't this... I mean, I agree that outbound we certainly need more lanes, but isn't it just going to clog? Where does the traffic go when it gets closer to town?
Well, it's stage 2, and there'll be further stages as well.
But you can't widen the tunnel.
No, well, it's 9 minutes better. So.
But what happens when you get to the tunnel?
Well, these are projects right across the network where we're investing in roads which seeks to overall reduce commute times, Neil. But if you're suggesting we shouldn't do it, then I disagree.
No, but I'm worried about it just creating a bottleneck as we get to the tunnel. We can't widen the tunnel.
Well, we'll deal with these projects one at a time.
What, you would look at widening the tunnel?
Well, let's just keep working with the state government to ensure we do the right thing by commuters here in Melbourne.
Speaking of the state government, I read that Daniel Andrews is your new best friend. Is that right?
Well, look, to be honest, we're from different sides of politics, and I don't know if we share too many interests, but one thing we do share an interest in is getting projects done. We both lead governments. I mean, the elections are over now. There was one for us this year. There was one for him last year. And so, as two leaders of two governments of different political colours, we just want to get on and build things.
The economy figures out today will confirm it's a bit soft, won't they?
Well, I said that the other day. I mean, it has softened. What the final numbers are, we'll see. But I was pretty pleased with the current account numbers that came out yesterday. That's the first current account surplus that we've had since 1975. I mean, Skyhooks were leading the charts back then.
Yeah, we were hardly in good shape in 75, though.
Well, what I'm saying, our export performance today has been quite extraordinary. And that's been building up over many years. I mean, we've gone from covering our trade agreements that previously only covered about 28% to 70%. And so, the work we've done to build our export markets as a government over the last 5 years is really paying dividends now, and we're going to keep expanding those, both with the European Union and with the UK.
But the economy's flagging. I mean, that's all terrific, but it's not doing a lot of good here at the moment, back here. And various industry leaders are saying that, well, for example, that the tax cuts have failed. They haven't stimulated spending.
Well, that's a ridiculous comment. I mean, the figures that are coming out today are for the June quarter. The tax cuts were passed in the September quarter, the current quarter.
You're confident still they'll work?
Yeah, of course I am. And not only that, but we've had the cash rate changes, we've got the reductions, we've had the infrastructure program, which is rolling out. And we're going to spend $1.5 billion in infrastructure in Victoria this year. Just this year.
Are you prepared to spend still more on infrastructure to avoid recession?
Well, what I'll do is continue to monitor the implementation of our plans. See, Neil, I'm not surprised by the difficulties we're seeing globally at the moment. When we put the budget together in May, I said we should cut taxes, we should spend more on infrastructure. I said we should invest more in skills transitioning. I said we need to keep the rate of job growth running, which is above what our budget estimated. And we've seen record employment growth. We've got 1.4 million jobs have been created. We ever had over 100,000 jobs in the last year for people aged over 55. So
retail spending's contracted. Are you concerned by that?
Yeah, I am concerned by that.
So what do you do about it?
But you cut taxes, you build infrastructure, you invest in skills.
And you're saying it hasn't flowed through yet?
No, I'm saying that happened in the September quarter. And the figures we're talking about today were for last year. So, you can't govern by rear vision mirror. You have to look forward. And when you look forward, what do you got to do? Expand your export markets, invest in skills, invest in infrastructure, provide tax relief. Now, let's remember what the alternative was. Labor said
the election's over. You just told me the election's over.
Well, the election is over, but what would have happened if we'd actually increased taxes by $387 billion? That was their prescription for the economy, and that was dead wrong.
Well, let's talk about the future. Are you prepared to forego the surplus if necessary to provide stimulus?
The surplus provides an important guardrail for our economic decision making. We're not going to do what the Labor government did when they were last in election, where they recklessly racked up debt, which we are still paying for today and will for the next decade. We will carefully and soberly look at what's happening in the economy. We've got plans that we put in place in the budget to deal with exactly the situation we're talking about now, and we'll watch those programs. That's why I sat down with the premiers to make sure the infrastructure commitments happened, that they weren't on paper, they were pavement, they were concrete, they were bitumen.
So are you prepared, if necessary, to forego the surplus to provide stimulation for the economy?
Well, I'm not seeing anything at the moment which would
but you're
draw
reviewing,
that into...
You said you're reviewing things. Is
and
part
we will,
of the
but
review
I'm not
the
seeing
surplus?
anything, Neil, that would draw that question to our consideration.
But it must be on the table. If you're reviewing things, that must be one of the issues on the table. What else you got?
No, I don't believe. See, we're putting the budget in a much stronger position, Neil, and that's taken us... This is the first budget surplus year we've been in for 12 years. And I know Labor and others are so quick to throw away those gains as they are on the gains we've had on border protection. They think you can just so carelessly throw this away at the first breath of wind. And our government won't do that. We will stay the course. We will be consistent. We'll be measured. We'll be reasoned. We've got our plans. We'll implement them. And that's the stability I think Australians voted for.
What if you were to rate the economy out of 10, what would it be?
Well, globally, we're the second fastest growing developed economy in the G7.
So what do you give us out of 10?
Well, I'll let others judge it. But, 1.4 million people who've got a job would say that's pretty good.
Is recession a danger?
Look, I don't see us going that territory at all. But let's remember, Germany just had a negative quarter of growth. The UK just had a negative quarter of growth. Australia hasn't. The fact that Australia, albeit today's growth figures, I think over the year will show a softness. I think what we'll also see is that in a tough climate, we're actually battling away quite well. And you know how I put that down to? I put that down to hard-working Australians starting businesses, going to work every day. That's who I say the heroes of the Australian economy are.
19,000 Hong Kong residents in this country. There's a suggestion they be given visas to stay because of the dramas in Hong Kong. Would you look at that?
Oh, look, I think those sorts of issues are premature. I think what we have to do on this situation, as I've said all along, is just to remain calm. We're closely assessing the situation. The Foreign Minister has particularly been doing that. We're in regular contact with our Consul General there in Hong Kong, and we just urge protesters to be peaceful, and we just urge de-escalation of the situation.
Do you urge China to show restraint?
Of course.
I know we need them for trade. We need to get on with them, but gee, they sort of stand against everything we support, don't they?
Look, we're two different countries, but that doesn't mean you can't get on. I was in Vietnam the other day.
It's hard to get on with a country that's got concentration camps.
Well, It's not for us to go around and tell every country how they run their show.
Well, I hope we would have told Adolf Hitler.
But we also raise these issues, as you would expect us to, and we do it unapologetically. But we don't run China, but they are part of a global community. And this is the point I've been making about China. It was the point to see China grow, engage the global economy and become a more successful economy and bring tens, if not hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Well, guess what? Mission accomplished. But that means today we're dealing with a different China from an economic standpoint than we were 30 years ago. So the challenge now is how do you integrate China both strategically and economically into a global economy and setting as a developed economy. And that means they got to play by the same rules as everybody else, whether that's on emissions reduction, on trade, or anything else. And that's, I think, the point the United States has made, and that's why I strongly support what the President's been saying about that.
But isn't our morality affected by our economy here? And we're saying we can't really say what we'd like to say about China because we've got to trade with them.
Well, we've been trading with China, for decades.
But we seem to turn a blind eye to some of their atrocities.
No, I don't think that's fair. And particularly it's not fair if you, and I know you're not suggesting this, Neil, but when Australians are caught up in these issues as well, we raise these issues consistently and very, very strongly. And Australia, we were one of many who signed the most recent document that was calling out human rights issues that went to the United Nations.
This Tamil family, is it correct there are 6,000 other Tamils in similar position?
Everyone has had their cases assessed as to whether they're refugees by the government. That's my advice.
And these are illegal immigrants?
Yeah, these are people who have had their refugee claims rejected, and they are now going through the appeals process. No, they illegally entered Australia.
They illegally entered?
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
That's my understanding of the figures that you're referring to.
Yeah.
I'm happy to stand corrected on that, but that's my understanding.
So there are 6,000 have been, and they will be sent home?
Yeah. And look, as they should be. And if Priya and Nadez and Kapika and Thoronica want to then come to Australia, like 1,500 who have already been sent back before them, they can seek to do that. And there are a range of...
Would you expedite that?
I'd apply the same rules that I apply to everybody else. This is the whole point. To have a fair immigration system, you don't create special cases just because Twitter says so.
But we do. I mean, the opposition's saying that the minister's intervened 4,000 times.
There are many interventions that take place. But
Has he intervened with illegal immigrants, though?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not aware of all those 4,000 cases. There are many of them. I used to be an immigration minister.
Did you ever intervene in these illegal immigrants will be allowed to stay even though they're illegal?
I cannot recall an occasion where I would have done that.
I mean, there have been various cases we've campaigned on who are not illegal immigrants.
Yeah,
that's another matter.
Exactly. And there are many cases where I intervened in those cases, not those who illegally entered Australia. And this is the point. I mean, Neil, this is a case which has been found that people... And look, let me say this first. I understand why Australians feel so strongly about this, and I don't for a second question their genuine, compassionate motivation in raising the issue. I genuinely respect that.
And you don't question the decency of this family?
Sorry?
You don't question
No, of course I don't. Of course I don't.
Can we be sure they won't be persecuted when they get back?
Yes, because, and that's not only me that's saying it, the High Court has found the same.
Okay.
So,
Are you annoyed that your religion's been brought into this?
Faith. I turn the other cheek now.
That's probably a good idea. Can you explain to me the relationship between media and government?
Well, it's the fifth estate. I mean
you're not doing a great job in terms of freedom of the press by arresting journalists and searching journalists' homes.
Well, why would journalists not be subject to the law now?
Well, it depends what the law is.
Well, what? So
if it's suppressing legitimate information, it's a problem.
Well, I'm sorry. If people break the law in this country, they should be subject to the same laws as everybody else. Politicians and people can search my home if they want, if they suspect me of a crime. Neil, I don't place myself above the law. I don't see why anyone else would.
The dinner with the Nine management on Monday night.
Oh, there was only one member of Nine there from memory.
Oh, I thought anyway, it was on the set of the Today program in the Nine facilities and it's been criticised.
They hosted it.
Whose idea was it?
I couldn't tell you. I was just
not
invited.
Your problem, but
no, it's not.
Do you see anything wrong with it?
Well, it's not really for me to say. I mean, they were happy to host an event, and I attended an event. I understand they attended a Labor Party event last night. So,
but they didn't host it.
Well, no, but that's really for them to explain.
Yeah,
not
fair.
me.
I think that's a fair point. Aussie Post prices going up. Did you approve that?
Yeah, that has to come through us, but that doesn't affect the concession arrangements for pensioners and others, and it doesn't affect Christmas cards. But the fact is that people aren't using letters as much, and the people who will pay the extra here are largely large corporates who use it. So this is largely falling on corporates and government, this extra cost.
You've been doing a lot of travel recently. Do you enjoy the world stage? Or would you rather be at the footy?
I'd rather be at the footy, to be honest. But you know, it's an important part of the job. And at this part of the year, there's always a lot of it, and I'm always very sensitive to the fact that Australians would be thinking, well, you know, he should be back here more often, and I have a great deal of sympathy with that view. But you know, this was the first opportunity we've had to sit down with the G7 as a country. And that's an important opportunity, particularly when I'm trying to press trade agreements in Europe at the moment and with the UK and everything that's happening with Brexit. So it was an important opportunity. And Vietnam, well, this is going to be a huge relationship for Australia, and I'm really excited about that. And of course, Timor-Leste celebrating their 20th year since the vote. All those years ago, Australia played an important role in that, and I think it was great to be there. And that was done on a bipartisan basis. I had Anthony there with me because you know, Australia supports Timor-Leste.
You've got a state dinner with President Trump soon.
Yeah.
He's a little different.
He's unconventional.
How do you get on
that's
with him?
fair. I get on very well with him. But more importantly, our countries get on. And I think that's the real connection. I mean, he's a very different president to previous presidents. But what
Is he a good president?
Yeah, we've got a straight-up relationship, and he respects Australia.
That's avoiding the question.
No,
I can understand why.
Well,
is he a good president?
Is he a good president for Australia? Yes.
Okay. Boris Johnson, British Prime Minister, got a bit of strife over there, but he has had time to.
Yeah, he's got a bag full of angry cats at the moment.
He has had time to have a go at you about the cricket in the Commons.
Prime Minister Morrison of Australia, who heroically masked his emotions in the face of the historic innings of Ben Stokes.
You going to watch it tonight?
Yeah, I am going to watch it, and Steve Smith will be back, Bojo, so, you know, I'm looking forward to it.
You're confident?
Yeah, look, and that last test was an amazing test, and we caught up the next morning, and we'd both been watching it, I'm sure, the day before. And, you know, this is a great test series. It's a great test series.
Thank you for coming in. Two little quick things. My city's better than your city. Melbourne is rode ahead of Sydney. Sydney's come up because it's green. Well, we've got a problem with crime. But we're number 2 to Vienna. You're number 3 to Melbourne.
Yeah, well, the Vienna's beaches are rubbish. So I'm sure we'll both get on top of them in the years ahead. That's why we've got to invest in this infrastructure, Neil. That's what we've got to do here, and that's what we are doing. And Melbourne is a great city.
And speaking of beaches, I'm told that you surprised yourself winning the election. You, in fact, had a holiday booked in Fiji the week after the election. Is that right?
Well, we did go to Fiji.
Yeah, but that was a
after the
couple of
election.
weeks later. I heard the week after.
No.
Some of your colleagues said, well, you were about to go off.
No, I was several weeks after the election. Yeah,
You hadn't booked it earlier.
No. Huh. No, I didn't arrange anything until after the election. I was focused 100%. I think as people saw me camping and painting all the way up to the close of polls.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Good on you, Neil. Great to be here.
The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison.